Here's another doubt that I had about Judaism before converting to Islam. Hi, I'm a Jewish reviewer to Islam, and this is part of my series where I make content for Jews curious about Islam. So one of the biggest issues that I had with Judaism was how complicated the religion had become. And subhanAllah, the Quran literally warns us against this. One example is kashrut. In the Torah, God had said, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. But over time that became, you can't even eat chicken with dairy, you can't mix meat and dairy at all, you need separate pots, separate utensils, separate dishes, separate sinks, and you even need to wait hours between eating both. And to me, that just felt like religion kept getting heavier, not clearer. Same thing with Shabbat. In the Torah, God says to cease work and rest on the seventh day. But over time, that became pages and pages of restrictions. You can't tear toilet paper on Shabbat. You can't cut a cake with writing on it. You can't carry around your keys. You can't shower. You can't do so many everyday things. So I didn't struggle with obeying God. I struggled with how much the religion was being overcomplicated by human beings.
I want to ask that Jewish woman who converted to Islam, she does not use her real name on social media, so let's call her Hagar. Why she thinks that wherever Islam has gained a significant presence in the West, crime, rape, and murder have increased. Why are the places where women have the fewest freedoms, Iran, Pakistan, Yemen, and Afghanistan, are countries ruled by Islamic law? Why, in Sweden, for example, do Muslims make up 11% of the population but account for 63% of rapists? Why, in Israel, is the Muslim minority that makes up 1/5 of the population responsible for more than 80% of murders? Why, out of 57 Islamic countries, only 3, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Senegal, are democracies, while Israel, the only Jewish state, has been a democracy since the day it was founded? Why in many Muslim countries is living Islam illegal and punishable by death? Why is freedom of speech, a cornerstone of Western society, restricted in Muslim countries where people are forbidden from criticizing Muhammad or the Quran? Why are stoning or flogging accepted punishments for sex outside marriage and amputation an acceptable punishment for theft? The reason Muslim countries lag behind Western countries on nearly every measure of quality of life and well-being is precisely what the woman in the video presents as one of Islam's supposed strengths: the fact that Islamic law cannot be revised because it is considered a divine command. As a result, the moral code remains largely as it was 1300 years ago when Islam was founded. Judaism, by contrast, has halakha, a word derived from the Hebrew verb to walk. It moves, develops, and changes over time. That is why Judaism can integrate into every modern Western country, just as this woman says.
Pro-Palestine or pro-Israel?
I'm actually pro-America. However, if you were to ask me if I'm pro-Muslim or pro-Jew, I'm going to pick pro-Jew.
Why do you say that?
Well, because Jews allow freedom of speech, they allow freedom of religion, they're tolerant of other religions. So I can appreciate that they fit in with Western culture more.
And why do Jews integrate so successfully into the West and into modernity? What is the power of modernity? What has enabled it to lift 130,000 people out of extreme poverty every day over the past 30 years? What allowed humanity to move from a world in which nearly everyone faced hunger 200 years ago to one in which people generally die of starvation only in war-torn countries subjected to deliberate sieges? What allowed average life expectancy to more than double over the past 2 centuries? The answer is the questions it is asking. Not every answer produced by modernity is correct, but the questions, the ability to doubt, to investigate, and to seek the deepest truth are what created the technological power that surrounds us. Sometimes modernity tries to apply scientific reasoning to areas that are not scientific, such as morality. That is where it fails, and that is the strength of tradition. It places boundaries around reason and shows us where reason reaches its limits. These two poles, the questioning of assumptions and the limits that tradition or religion place on human reason are not foreign to Judaism. That is why Judaism integrates so well into the West. Judaism recognizes the moral value of respecting human beings because they were created in the image of God. It therefore recognizes the power of human reason, which distinguishes human beings from other animals. Moreover, Judaism has a tradition of asking questions and challenging authority. Islam, however, does not hold both of these principles at once. Islam is not tolerant of questioning, and that is why it has failed so miserably at integrating with the West.